Well, the term evolution has multiple meanings. It can mean simply change over time. It can refer to small-scale variations among very similar organisms, like the Galapagos finches that got a little longer, a little shorter beaks in response to varying weather patterns. It can also refer to the idea that all organisms are related by common ancestry. And most importantly, and this is the most important aspect of the Darwinian idea of evolution, it refers to the idea that there is an undirected, unguided process called natural selection acting on random variations, and in our modern times we would also talk about acting on random mutations. And that undirected process produces all the forms of life we see and all the change that's implied by Darwin's depiction of the history of life as a great branching tree. So in explaining my skepticism about evolutionary theory, I typically explain why I am skeptical about the creative power of that mutation natural selection mechanism, because that's the most important element of the theory. I don't doubt that there's been change over time. I don't doubt microevolutionary change. I think that some organisms may be related by common ancestry. I'm skeptical about universal common ancestry because there's too much evidence of discontinuity in the fossil record and in the genomic record. But the main focus of my skepticism concerns the claims for the creative power of the mutation selection mechanism. In 2016, I attended a conference at the Royal Society in London where leading evolutionary biologists convened a conference to evaluate new developments in evolutionary thinking and evolutionary biology. But the main unstated reason for convening the conference was that they recognized the need for a new theory of evolution, and that the mutation selection mechanism does a nice job of explaining that small-scale variation in the Galapagos finches, but it does a very poor job of explaining the origin of birds or insects or the first animals, or what biologists call morphological innovation. It explains small-scale variation, but not major change, major innovation in biological form. And at that conference in 2016, the first lecture was given by a leading Austrian evolutionary biologist named Gerd Müller. And he started his talk by enumerating what he called the explanatory deficits of textbook neo-Darwinian theory, the first one of which had to do with this lack of creative power associated with the mechanism. And so I have various ways of explaining that, but one easy way to grasp that is to think about the problem of generating new information. Because in biology today, we now realize that if you want to build a new form of life, or if the evolutionary process is to succeed in building a new form of life, it must produce a lot of new information. You need information to build new biological form. You need new information to build proteins to service new types of cells, etc. So where's that information come from? Well, in the Darwinian scheme, it comes as a result of random changes in the DNA, in the sections of DNA that have in the characters, the information-bearing subunits of the DNA that carry the information. Well, we know from our computer world that if you start randomly changing zeros and ones in a section of computer code, you're going to destroy that code, that operating system or that program, long before those random changes are going to have a chance of generating some new program or operating system. And it turns out from very careful studies that have been done by, on mutating DNA and proteins, it turns out the same thing is true in DNA, in the cell. If you start changing the A's, G's, and T's, the digital characters or the genetic characters in the genetic language at random, you will invariably degrade the structure of the resulting proteins long before you'll generate the capacity to build a new protein. And so the origin of information is a crucial problem that has not been solved by the standard neo-Darwinian evolutionary model, or I would argue and have argued in Darwin's Doubt, any of the post-neo-Darwinian theories of evolution that have been proposed either.